Hi, I'm Gooba, and this is not our regular content. If you've been following us for a while, you may have picked up on the fact that Jetpack and I are pretty big music fans, particularly in the rock and metal genre. We've never made content about it, but we've talked about it from time to time on stream and occasionally posted about it on our socials. It's a big part of our lives, and it's something that I've wanted to talk more about for a long time, but I never considered making a video about it on here because this is primarily a gaming channel, and that's what we're known for. But then I thought, screw it. This is our channel. We're going to make the videos that we want to make. If you're a longtime viewer of ours, don't worry. We're still going to make gaming videos. We're not retiring from Nancy Drew, but we may branch out from time to time into one of our other interests outside of gaming. So all that is just my long-winded way of saying that my favorite band, A Day to Remember, just put out a new album recently, and I want to talk about it. I have a lot of thoughts on this album and the band in general, so I thought, why not go back through their full catalog, rank all of their albums, and then see where the new one fits in with the rest of their releases. So that's what I'm going to do. But before all that, let me preface by saying that I myself am not a musician. I didn't study music theory. I am in no way an expert on the subject. I am simply a big fan of music with a lot of opinions and a YouTube channel. So before we get into the ranking, I do want to give a quick shout out to Metal Trenches, who I believe made this tier list and also did a video recently ranking all of A Day to Remember's albums. I did make a couple changes to the tiers themselves, but overall, this is their list. I was going to explain the difference in the tiers, but I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory and I've already rambled enough, so let's just get into it. We're going in chronological order, so we'll be starting with A Day to Remember's debut album, And Their Name Was Treason, released in 2005. So I say goodbye to a town that has ears and eyes. So as was the case with most early 2000s MySpace core bands, A Day to Remember's debut was pretty rough. The production wasn't very good, and they hadn't quite found their sound yet. It kind of sounds like every other post-hardcore band from that era. But with that said, there was definitely some potential here, and there were a few songs that I think set them apart from other bands of that time. I've always particularly liked You Should Have Killed Me When You Had the Chance, and I know it's cheesy, but I'll always have a soft spot for You Had Me at Hello. Not great, but it gave a glimpse into what the band would become in future releases. I'm gonna put it in okay. I really thought I had a physical copy of this one, but apparently I don't. Next up, we have A Day to Remember's sophomore album, For Those Who Have Heart. This was a massive improvement on the first album. This was the band's first release with Victory Records, and you can immediately see the difference in production. Definitely one of their heavier albums, with a majority of the songs leaning more towards the metalcore side of the band. But that's not to say that that's a bad thing. Some of their most iconic breakdowns come from this record. The Plot to Bomb the Panhandle was the first song I had ever heard from them, and that mix of my two favorite genres being pop punk and metalcore immediately locked me in as a fan for life. I really wish they hadn't had Ron Jeremy in the music video for that song, but we're not going to talk about that. They followed this album up with a reissue of the album with a few bonus tracks, including a couple re-recorded songs from their first album, those being Heartless, which I think they did so much better the second time, as well as You Should Have Killed Me When You Had the Chance, which personally I don't think sounded as good on this one, but that's fine. And last but not least, the reissue also included their now iconic cover of Kelly Clarkson's song Since You've Been Gone, which was and still is the best of the Punk Goes Pop cover songs that dominated this era of music. This album was a major improvement. I'm putting it in great. Now let's get into the Debacle, which was 2008's Old Record, which was a full re-record of the band's first album. This is for you. And I can hear you right now saying, Gooba, that doesn't count. That's not a new album. Well, the band counted it as an album in their lawsuit with Victory Records, so I'm going to include it here. That's a crazy story, by the way. You should look it up. This album came out worse than the original it was based on, but when you know the full story, you completely understand why. The band was given literally 2 days to re-record their entire first album, which they obviously didn't want to do, but as young kids who just signed with a pretty prominent record label, they couldn't really say no. It's the worst thing they've ever put out, and I think the band would agree. But I'm not going to pin that on the band. So although I'm going to put this album in bad, I'm also going to change the name of the tier to Victory's Fault. Sound good? And now we come to the reason I am even making this video to begin with, my favorite album of all time, 2009's Homesick.
Let's go!
This is the only vinyl I own. I don't even own a record player, but when I saw that this was getting a reprint, I knew I had to have it. Also, this artwork is just so sick. I will get a tattoo of this someday. This album contains everything I love about this band. It so perfectly captures that mix of pop punk and metalcore that A Day to Remember does so well. You've got some classic 2000s pop punk songs like Downfall of Us All, NJ Legion Ice-T, another song about The Weeknd. And then on the heavier side, you have Mr. Highway, which spawned about 1 million Disinfect Your Surroundings memes.
Disrespect your surroundings!
Or Holding It Down for the Underground, which inspired the shirt I'm wearing.
I turn my back and you keep the wall.
It has the breakdown on the back. Can you see it? This album also includes my favorite song by the band, My Life for Hire, which so perfectly mixes a great vocal performance by Jeremy, a super catchy chorus, and a breakdown that will make you want to immediately start a wall of death.
Watch your back, you lose yourself. This is a battleground.
This album is perfect, therefore it belongs in perfection. So how do you follow up a pretty widely considered perfect album? The answer? Like this. 2010's What Separates Me From You. For a long time, I would look at this album and automatically discount it because it followed up my favorite album of all time. But it took a recent re-listen for me to realize there is not a single song on this album that I would skip. Sticks and Bricks and Second Sucks are some of the best heavier songs that the band has.
I paid the price, so let's take what's mine.
All Signs Point to Lauderdale is the quintessential pop punk song for kids that hated their hometown.
I hate this town, it's so washed up, and all my friends don't give a fuck.
And All I Want was the band's rock anthem that perfectly fits on rock radio, but still has that unique A Day to Remember sound. Also, I'll never forget the little promo video the band made when they announced this album.
If you check iTunes, you check YouTube, some of our biggest hits have been acoustic songs.
Progression, not aggression. Just because we screamed in our past, we don't want it to echo into our futures.
Get real. We're writing an A Day to Remember record.
It's one of the best things the band has ever made. It goes in perfection. Now we come to the album that probably had the biggest impact on my life at the time, 2013's Common Courtesy. This album was recorded and set for release right in the middle of the band's lawsuit with Victory Records that I mentioned earlier. I won't go too much into that because it could easily be its own video, but basically the band was suing the label for breach of contract and they wanted to self-release this album, but the label wouldn't let them. And this was the first album where I was personally very invested in the release process and got to see everything transpire in real time. I remember the day that the band announced that they could self-release the album, and I was about as excited as if I was actually in the band.
About 3 hours ago, we were told by that same judge that we are legally allowed to release our record.
The 2 singles they released for this album were both fantastic, with Violence being on the heavier side, and Right Back at It Again being more on the upbeat, catchy side. I went to both tours supporting this album, and I'll never forget when they opened the show with the intro riff to Violence, and they set off confetti when the song kicked in.
The song's a new song! It's called Violence! That's an intro fucking place! Set it off! Come on!
Nothing crazy in terms of production, but just a really fun and high energy way to start the show. The album itself was and still is the longest album A Day to Remember has ever released, which makes it even more insane that this album, at least for me, is a no skips record. It's one of the most balanced records in terms of pop punk and metalcore, with City of Ocala and I Surrender being good examples of the former, and Dead and Buried and The Document Speaks for Itself being the latter. Also, I may get some flack for this because If It Means a Lot to You off of Homesick is pretty widely considered the band's big, slower song, but I personally have always favored this album's I'm Already Gone as the band's best slow song. This album also contains Jetpack's favorite song by the band, End of Me, which gives it some extra points.
Know me all too well, and I can't suppress the memory.
It doesn't quite beat out Homesick, but I cannot express how incredibly close these two albums are for me. It completes A Day to Remember's perfect trilogy, and therefore it too is perfection. Now we have 2016's Bad Vibrations, and this is an interesting one.
Pick your poison, live with remorse.
So this is the album that started what I think a lot of fans consider the low point for the band, and I was also kind of in that boat for a long time. This is where the band started experimenting with their sound a little bit, leaning towards a more radio-friendly hard rock sound rather than the punk sound that they were known for. And again, this followed up what I considered to be the perfect trilogy, so my expectations were already way too high right off the jump. But revisiting this album now, I definitely appreciate it a lot more than I did when it released. The title track, Bad Vibrations, Exposed, and Reassemble are all great heavier songs.
No war, no peace.
Paranoia is a super fun, fast-paced, almost hardcore sounding track.
Expect the worst of everyone, me.
And Naivety and We Got This check the pop punk boxes. There's also the song Justified and one of the bonus tracks off of the deluxe edition In Florida that are personal favorites of mine that lean more towards a softer pop rock sound that the band does really well. Not a perfect album, but another very solid addition to the band's catalog. I'll put it in fantastic. Okay, here we go. 2021's You're Welcome is pretty widely considered the band's worst album. If Bad Vibrations was the band's way of dabbling in a more pop rock sound, this album was them diving headfirst into it. There are some songs on this album, Bloodsucker probably being the best example of this, that I think would be more fitting on like an Imagine Dragons album. I think this album's biggest crime for the most part is that it's just forgettable. Even still, there are some bright spots on this album that make it still listenable for me. Resentment is a great heavier song, even though Jetpack hates this breakdown call out.
Welcome to the eye of the tiger. Go.
Last Chance to Dance is a certified ass beater. Degenerates is pretty fun, and Mind Reader, FYM, and Viva La Mexico, although pretty corny, are still very catchy songs. There's also something I've noticed Jeremy does on certain songs, ironically enough this album's being Bloodsucker, where he'll sing the first verse a bit softer,
When I wake up, the cross above my bed.
and then belt the second verse. And I found that that vastly improves the song for me. There's probably a term for this, but again, I'm just a dumb gamer. Don't look to me for music theory. This album is undoubtedly a low point, but I still don't think it's unlistenable. I'm gonna put it in okay. And finally, we come to the real reason I'm making this video, which is A Day to Remember's new album, appropriately titled Big Ole Album Volume 1. This whole album cycle has been such a whirlwind that literally spans the last 2.5 years. First off, I am forever grateful for the band releasing the first and also best single from this album, Miracle, on my 30th birthday. It had been over a year since You're Welcome released, which was lacking in a lot of the things that I had come to expect from the band. So this single having a huge chorus, a super heavy riff, and a great breakdown was literally the best birthday present the band could give me. Also, if anyone can tell me where I can find this Miracle hoodie I missed out on, I will be forever in your debt. Then almost 2 years later, the band surprise dropped the second single, Feedback, which was not as good. I don't know, man. This song sounds like the band was trying to go back to their sound on You're Welcome, and this cringy ass line at the end of the song being the band's way of saying deal with it.
I want your feedback. I'll let you know, motherfucker.
And it just did not hit the way I think they intended. I still don't think it's their worst song, but it definitely did not give me high hopes for whenever the new album saw the light of day, which turns out would be 9 months later when they surprise dropped the album exclusively on CD and vinyl a month before it released on streaming services. This was such a weird, but at the same time kind of genius move by the band, because it gave diehard fans who were gonna buy a vinyl anyway for their collections a month's early access to the album, while still dropping 2 new singles on streaming services the same day to hold over the streaming crowd. I was not about to wait a month to hear this album, so for the first time in about a decade, I bought a CD, and I am so glad I did. This album was the perfect comeback for the band. With the exception of Feedback, there is not a single song on this album that I won't enjoy going back to. You've got some great heavy tracks with Make It Make Sense, Bad Blood, and To the Death, all sporting a super solid breakdown.
From the bottom of my heart. Fuck you!
Some really solid poppier songs like All My Friends, which is just the perfect song for a night out with the boys. Am I right, fellas?
It's like, oh shit, here we go again. Another night out here with all my friends.
Also, Flowers is a great pop punk song, which for the most part is a sweet and uplifting song about family.
I don't wanna wait till the party's over to tell you everything you should say sober.
But then somehow throws in a hardcore breakdown about respect, which shouldn't fit in a song like this, but still somehow does. Then there's LeBron, which I did not want to like because Jordan is the GOAT and I will not hear any arguments otherwise, but this song is just so goddamn fun, I couldn't not show it the respect it deserves. The song Silence is a really interesting addition because it's not like anything the band has ever done before. Its influences being bands like Gojira and Coal Chamber, but it somehow totally works on this album. But by far the best song on this album, in my opinion, is Same Team.
You always say take what you want from it. Turn around and blame it. We ain't on the same team lately.
It borrows a lot from my favorite song by them, My Life for Hire, which has everything I love about this band. It's a great vocal performance by Jeremy. I really love when he'll hit a random high note, which he does in both songs.
And then everything falls away. Hurt you hard if you ever put up.
There's a huge chorus, a super heavy riff with pinch harmonics, and of course, a brutal breakdown.
Accountability is not convenient. You make a choice. Face the consequence.
This easily makes it into my top 5 songs by the band, and in terms of the album, it's a massive improvement on You're Welcome. I've had it on repeat for the last few weeks, and it has me so excited to see what the band cooks up for Volume 2. So I am putting A Day to Remember's Big Ole Album Volume 1 in Fantastic. So there you have it. That's my ranking of A Day to Remember's entire discography. Let me know in the comments if you agreed or disagreed with any of my rankings, and if you want to see more music related videos from us, let us know, because there's a lot more opinions where these came from. Like and subscribe, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.